Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mouthy Money podcast. Today I've got a returning guest who has been on the podcast before and is also a regular contributor to the Mouthy Money website. That is Michael Taggart. Michael, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing, Michael?
I'm all right. I've got my, I should say cup of tea, but it's actually a cup of coffee. I always have one cup of coffee every day. So,
Interesting. For those listeners who've not come across Michael before, the reason he's waxing lyrical about tea already is because he runs a tea business, and that is why he writes a column for us called Diary of an SME Owner. So he tells us all about the kind of trials and tribulations of being a small business owner, and the kind of I think best described as the kind of the joys and frustrations of it. Is that would be a good way of describing
yeah,
it?
I do try to be reasonably honest in it. So I don't, I mean, I don't, no one's going to benefit from reading a sanitized version of what running a small business is like. So when I mess up, whether it's my fault or not, it always is my fault. I like to kind of be honest about that.
Well,
But
so
yeah.
that being said, your column is probably one of the most popular items we've got on Mouthy Money. It gets really good, really well read. I think people really empathise with the struggle, which in some ways is understandable. Even if you don't run a small business, if you're an employee and that kind of thing, and the frustrations of work and life in general, I think feed through. So.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds like I should negotiate a new contract with you if it's been so well read.
Okay, I'll maybe tone down my compliments a little bit at this juncture. No, but we've got you back on. We've got you back on just for a bit of a business update, see and find out how things are getting on, and then we've got a few bits and pieces to dig through as well. So let's get started with the first question. How are things getting on? How's it going at MDT?
So there's positives and negatives as there always are with business. So I think on the upside, I think the word is growing. Every small business wants to grow, and we are. So we're winning clients regularly. Obviously, there's a bit of attrition with clients, as there always is, but the net number is growing and kind of always is. But we are seeing a slight drop in revenue per client. There could be many causes of that, but it could be that there's a little bit of a downturn in the sort of hospitality sector. We supply mostly to hotels and restaurants. I mean, I kind of jumped ahead to the downside a bit there. I mean, still on the upside, we're doing a lot of innovative stuff at the moment. So we're launching new product ranges all the time. So we've got a product range coming out, which is actually a tea rub range, hopefully in the next few weeks. So I won't plug it here. You can see it when it comes out, but it's literally rubbed onto fish and meat and what have you. But ours will be tea based, obviously. So we've come up with all our own recipes. So we're really excited about that. We may be, this is a bit of an exclusive for you, Ed. We may be opening another shop. That'll be
Oh
probably
wow!
a with another hospitality business, but that could be in the offing. Again, I can't say too much because it hasn't happened yet, and these things have a habit of going wrong. What else? We're always exploring different ways of growing as well. So we're doing a lot more networking than we used to. So we've joined a networking club. So I'm off up to Twickenham Rugby Club in, I think it's tomorrow or the day after, to do some hobnobbing. And you're not there to sell; you're there to join a network and to be friendly to people, and hopefully, find things in common. But eventually, obviously the point of doing it is that you open doors for each other. So yeah, lots going on. And I guess the final thing is we're getting into a program of events now. So we're running tea tasting events in the shop, which is another sort of line of revenue. Business going well. Downside, and maybe you're going to ask me a bit more about this, the specifics of it. We are seeing a little bit of interruption in the flow of money into the business. And if you want me to sort of go into that, it's basically a little bit less revenue per client, as I've said. That could just be a natural little dip in the annual thing. We've only been doing this really for a year, which I have to pinch myself about sometimes. But we've had a couple of unpaid invoices as well. So one was a company it was that they went into liquidation and didn't pay their final invoice. I guess you've got to factor that sort of thing into your business plan. It's going to happen. And then there's a client, which is actually a new client, who's got a fairly big or first order with us, who's just not paying. So I was going to say I hope they're not going to be watching this, but I'm at the stage where I actually don't care. Maybe I hope they are. So it may be that businesses are going through a bit of a tough time in the hospitality sector, I think.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question for you. I mean, because you're at the kind of, I feel like sometimes we sort of sit on our perch up here and look down, at what's going on out there in the kind of the normal world. But you're at the coalface of, small business, the economy. And I get from what you say there that there is a little bit of kind of pinch at the fringes. I mean, obviously we're sort of, things are supposed to be on paper getting better, but how does it feel for you, in that broader sense?
I mean, we've heard so much, haven't we? And anyone listening to or watching this will have heard endlessly about the cost of living crisis, or COSI lives, as I like to call it. But it hasn't really come through yet. People have known that it's arriving. And people's savings are starting to dwindle, and things are going up in the shops and what have you. But the full effect of it, I don't think has come through yet. And I think we're at the point now where people have run out of their savings, and people have really started to think about, we're not going to have a holiday this year, so we're definitely not going to have some posh tea. So I think we're at that phase of it. I mean, there are chinks of light, because inflation is down. Interest rates are probably going to come down fairly soon. They're the two big sort of indicators that people talk about. But I think we've maybe got 9, 10, maybe 12 months of people not spending a lot of money. And as you say, you can see that on the ground. I mean, our revenue in our shop has taken a bit of a dip compared to sort of September, October, November, December last year. Not much, but a little bit. It's noticeable.
Yeah, and this is kind of, I mean, this runs to the context of the timing of you and I having this catch up.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of a general election campaign, and there's obviously a lot going on, and yeah, it's the wall to wall coverage, and everything for 6 weeks kind of invades our lives in terms of information. From your perspective as an SME owner, do you feel spoken to by the big political parties? Do you think there's anything for you there to kind of dig your teeth into?
I'm just going to say absolutely not, Ed. It won't surprise you to hear that, I don't think. We had the leaders' debates on last night, or the first one. Sorry, I'm aging this recording slightly by saying that. I don't
It's
know
okay.
whether listeners will remember that by the time this goes out. But we had the first leaders' debates, and there was almost nothing in there for small business. It's this sort of endless chat about culture issues, about the sort of interminable fratricide that's going on in the Tory party. But it's not. You just don't hear much about small business. You don't hear much about whether there's possibility that VAT will come down, or how long is corporation tax going to stay at 25%. And when you think about the fact that small businesses are kind of 99 point something percent of all business in this country, and business itself is a huge part of the economy, I definitely don't feel spoken to. If you ask me how would I like to feel spoken to, I can't really put my finger on it, but I can't tell you out, now of any policies that I've heard that are going to affect my business for the better. All I've got in my head is Nigel Farage having milkshake thrown in his face, Ed Davey swimming in some sewage, and some row in the Labour Party about who's being selected and who's not being selected, and it's the night of the long knives and the Soviet purge. This is none of this. I mean, why? It's all a great laugh, but it's not serious stuff.
Yeah, there's a real kind of, and I agree with you here. And there's some, I mean, I've written columns about this recently, and there's so many kind of things that are going unsolved and have been unsolved for a very, very long time. And we have this kind of tyranny of triviality. And this runs far deeper. And you look back to, I mean, whatever you think about things like Partygate and all this kind of stuff, it's just internecine madness. While it's the fiddling while Rome burns stuff, isn't it? And I think the thing that's difficult for, I mean, look, I'm saying this as somebody from outside of your cohort, so to speak, but looking out from the outside, the difficulty for small businesses, there's not much of a coherent voice when small business as a concept encompasses such a massive
Yeah,
variation within the economy that it makes it difficult to unify, right? You do
yeah,
have, small enterprise groups and things like that, but how powerful they are, I don't know. Do you get
yeah.
involved with anything like that?
So as I said, we're trying to get involved in the local community a little bit. So we've joined a networking club. It's not that cheap. I mean, it's really good, by the way. I won't name them because
Mm.
I haven't asked them if I can, but it's really good. You get nice lunches wherever you go. You get to meet some high quality people, but it's quite a bit of money. It's like it's up towards £100 per event. And you're going to come away from a few of those with not much or just some very long term stuff. This is the sort of stuff that I think a local authority should be in charge of. I've worked for local authorities, and I do vaguely remember there being small business or business units in them. But it should be very easy for small businesses within a town or a city to find out what the council can do for them, or what the local authority can do for them, and how they can access that. I think that local authorities should be organising more community-based events. So, frankly, I don't think we should be paying for networking. We should have a really high-quality networking event run by the council, because it's only going to benefit the local area. It's going to make businesses better, operate better, and that's going to revitalise local economies. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question straight off a little bit.
No, you did. No, it's really interesting. I mean, getting the insight, and I think the thing is as well, the reason we like talking to you too about small businesses, which is not on our kind of primary list of topics that we talk about in Mouthy Money, which is generally about money, personal finances, is actually you know how do you do it? How do you start a small business, and how do you make that leap? There's a lot of people out there who I'm sure would love to, but don't, because it's uncharted territory for them. But I think it's really valuable to know that there are things out there, for people. There are resources,
Yeah.
but it's difficult to
The
tap
one
into that
thing,
stuff,
sorry
I
if I'm
guess.
preempting your question here,
Mm,
but the one thing that I really feel that there's a lack of is access to funding for local
mm,
business, or for small businesses. So I've looked quite often at funding because I think we're getting close to that stage of funding. I'm thinking about crowdfunding, because that's the thing I've seen done quite successfully, even by competitors. But that again is something that it'd be really useful if, rather than my one option being to pay someone 6, 7, 8 grand to consult for me and to help me with that, or for me to spend hours and hours on end working out how to do it right and getting it wrong. It would be really good if there was a bit of free advice on that sort of funding, rather than local authorities just saying, right, there's that grant, which it's not clear whether you qualify for. There's that one, which it doesn't look like you qualify for. And there's that grant there, which is going to take you 3.5 years to apply for, and 17 different meetings with the council. So I've actually been through those grant applications in previous jobs, and they are a nightmare. And you don't really have much idea of whether you're going to get the money or not at the end of it. And it's all for tech as well. Every bit of funding out there really seems to be for tech. I can understand that. We want to be a nation that has tech at its forefront. But, tech is still a small part of the business economy. So we need access to funding, and also access to people, and it needs to be more obvious how we can get it.
This draws me kind of to actually what the kind of overriding subject of your last column for us was, and that's the role of luck in life, I guess. I think because you were quite introspective in that sense in the column. But, in terms of running a small business and even personal finances, where do you see the role of luck? And this is where the philosophical bit of the podcast now, I think
Yeah.
we're going to get into. But
I actually did,
no, but
I
it's
did
it's good.
philosophy for my degree, English and philosophy, Edmund. So hopefully I've got something sensible to say here, although I think I spent more time at the bar than in the lecture hall. But anyway, um, my view on that is kind of growing, it's hardening as the years go by. And when I say hardening, I do mean that I increasingly think luck has a huge part to play in everything that we do, including business. And I wrote in that column something that really struck me when I was sort of looking, I don't know, I was on YouTube or something, and I found a speech by the comedian Tim Minchin. And he was, it's about 10 years ago, he was at his alma mater, they think it was the University of the West of Australia in Australia, obviously. And he was giving out degrees, and he said to all the audience, these young students who thought they'd all done really well, I just want to start by saying one thing. You all look pleased with yourself, but don't forget what you've just achieved is luck. You're so lucky that you were born probably born intelligent, or at least raised to be that way. You're lucky that you had good families, and if you didn't have good families, you're lucky that you had the DNA that created the sort of brain, that created the sort of personality that could make you resilient and fill you full of guile so that you could counter anything wrong in your circumstances. And I just found myself listening to this speech and saying, this is what I think of business. So I'm not going to be a real purist about it, Ed, because I do think there is some element of riding your luck. Well, I tell you what, I'm undecided about that. But there is some element of riding your luck, but there is an awful lot of luck as well. Have you just been particularly unlucky with closing deals? Have you been unlucky that the economy has taken an unexpected turn in your particular niche, or that a competitor has completely tanked your industry in some way? Is it that you've got a problem at home that there's just nothing you could have done about? So these elements of luck come into everything, and as I've said, including your own DNA. There's no decision you ever take is just plucked out of thin air. It's informed by something that you didn't have any say in. Whether that's your level of intelligence or things that have happened to you. So that's the thinking behind it all. And I don't want to rant on too much about the sort of philosophy of it. There are many people who are a lot better than me at talking about this. But what I think it means on the ground is, if you've done well, help each other, help others, because accept that you've had a fair bit of luck in where you are. Don't jump onto LinkedIn and write 10 reasons why I'm a brilliant businessman, or 9 reasons why I laughed my bad luck in the face. It doesn't work like that. So help people out and realize that you've been lucky, and then on the other side of the ledger, if things aren't working out a bit, even if you have to close a business down, don't be ashamed. Don't feel bad. Realize that circumstances just weren't right for you, and it just wasn't to be. And dust yourself down and try again, as the song goes. I'm not going to sing it.
Please don't. No, I'm joking. Yeah, it's such a it's a tough subject to grapple, and it is very easy to get philosophical about it, because it's kind of like, do you want to believe that you are just you're a leaf being blown along in the winds of history type thing, or do you have, real agency over the things that you do? And I look at my own kind of personal situation. Obviously, I work in personal finance, and I spend a lot of time talking about personal finance. So, as you might imagine, mine and my partner's finances are, generally speaking, quite organised. But we've had our own run-ins with sheer, luck and bad luck. And the best example of that was when we were saving for a house. And in the process of saving for a wedding, in the space of about 2 months of each other, which was our own decision that we made to make life difficult for us in that sense. But we had a random flood. A neighbour's washing machine above us in a flat above us exploded, flooded our entire flat, and made us homeless, which was a horrible bit of luck. But the irony of that was we ended up financially better off, because we ended up not having to pay rent for about 2 months. We got a good old payout from the home insurer at a time when cash was actually quite a useful thing when we were trying to
Right.
buy a house and also pay for a wedding and this kind of thing. So we had a rotten bit of luck, which fortunately turned itself, because we had a home insurance policy, into a good bit, a bit of helpful. But I think, yeah, I mean, for me, I think I do like to believe that there is an element of trying to do the best we can in the circumstances. Yeah,
So maybe you did another thing that you need to do there in business, Ed, which is steer bad situations into good ones if you can, which is another topic. But I don't know whether you did that consciously or whether the ship just turned on its own. So that's the element of riding luck, maybe possibly is about remain positive when things go wrong.
yeah,
Think about the ways that you can make the best of a situation, and just try and stay positive. It sounds trite, but just try to.
yeah. I mean, I think for us it was just like a sheer bloody mindedness. We've got to get through the next 3 months, like no matter what, and we're going to make some kind of big picture decisions here. I mean that whole process was a process of managing cash flow over the course of about 2 years anyway, which was like a
Yeah,
lesson in budgeting and planning, because actually we could afford to do it all. It was just a question of having the right cash at the right time to pay people for the wedding, to pay the deposit for the house, to pay the
yeah.
surveyor, to pay all that kind of stuff. um so that's what the flood actually helped us in that sense, because it helped our cash flow basically. Anyway, before we go down that rabbit hole, now, before we finish off, we are asking all of our guests a standardized set of questions now, and Michael, you are going to be no different. You've had a little bit of time to prepare on these, so hopefully,
But did I prepare as the question, Ed?
well, let's dive straight into
Let's
them.
see.
So the first one is a money gadget, tech, or app that you couldn't live without.
Right. So I thought long and hard about this, and I unfortunately couldn't come up with one that wasn't a bit boring. If it was just tech, and it's not really related to money, it would have been the Find My Phone or Find My Earphones thing, because I'm always losing my headphones, and maybe that is related to money because I listen to money podcasts and I listen to money or based audio books, and I'm always losing my headphones. And these days you can just say, Siri, find my headphones, and they'll beep somewhere. So that for me is just amazing. But yeah, the slightly more prosaic answer is I'm continually still annoyed that my brain, I walk around this earth with my brain now in my pocket, which is I don't have it with me, so I can't use it as a prop. But I was going to hold my phone up there, so I just do everything on it. So I do my banking on it. I pay. I send out invoices on it. I chase up payments from clients on it. I even design, memes or images for marketing on this same device. And that to me, 5 years ago, just didn't seem possible. There was no design app 5 years ago that you could do a decent image on for social media. With to sell a new line of tea that required an intricate cutout, and some really detailed design on. It's all there in your hand now, so that's the piece of tech for me.
I think I mean, it is a prosaic answer, but I don't think it's a bad answer, because it's so all encompassing, and it's like that. There was that Apple advert a few weeks ago
Yeah,
that got a lot of opprobrium. It was roundly criticised because it
right.
was a massive crusher coming down on all these things like guitars and record players and all these things, and basically the advert's point was, well, you can now do it all on an iPad. And that
Yeah,
was roundly criticised because obviously it's the idea is that you're destroying art, you're destroying culture by doing that. But there's a fundamental truth to it, isn't there? It's all this technology that once upon a time
yeah,
required rooms to fill. You can now
yeah.
just do it on this one little block, and it is
Yeah.
powerful. It's a
I
powerful
think
tool.
I think if you were looking for something a bit more specific, and I'm sure others have said this when you've asked them, but you'd probably be looking at some AI technology like Chat GPT. is something we use all the time. It's brilliant, and it's not
Oh,
something that
really?
we use, but we don't use it for blogging because, in my view,
Hmm.
is if you use it for blogging and article writing and social media posts, it just looks awful. It's use it as a block, as a foundation for it, but for research, it's just amazing. It's what are the health benefits of polyphenols, chat BT, which is something you get in green tea, and it will come back with some great stuff immediately. So in a way that you don't have to Google anymore and sift through links and articles. It will just give you some information. So if you wanted to be more specific, it'd be something along those lines.
Interesting. So the next question was a financial company that you've had a good experience with.
Now, this really genuinely was a difficult one, Ed. I went through my life. I went through my life from age 14 to pretty much now, and I haven't had many. And then I thought about something boring, like again, like a payment system like PayPal or something, which sure I've had good experiences with. But then I thought, actually, credit where it's due. My wife and I have just bought a camper van I say just about a year ago, and the insurance that came with that, and I will name them because they're so good, is called Just Campers, and it's a really, really fantastic app. Basically, I mean, I know not a lot of insurance companies do this now, but I'm new to this. You can basically talk to a robot on it to get someone added to your insurance as you're walking around, again, going back to the phone. And you can do that quite quickly if you've got the information you need. The dashboard is just a thing of beauty, and it will tell you when your tax is coming up. It will tell you when your insurance is coming up, and then it's got all the really lovely soft stuff like, did you know that it's common at the age that your camper van is at for the next thing to go wrong could be the fan belt or could be the distributor, or these are some great routes in Sussex where I live for camper vanning, that sort of thing. So I'm going to give that the big thumbs up. And then, Ed, if you get yourself a caravan or a camper van, think about Just Campers.
Well, that
That's
is
not an
it's a niche answer, and I really like it because we like niche answers. That's good. It's
okay.
interesting. My parents-in-law actually have a camper which we occasionally get to use. So I might have to make a suggestion when their insurance is next up for
Well, if you do,
renewal.
tell them to mention me, and hopefully I'll get a tenner off my next policy.
All right, we'll write up a contract after this. Let's not get into the details on the podcast. Wink, wink. No, I'm joking. So on the flip side of that, a financial company you've had a bad experience with.
Well, I mean, this is fairly easy for me, and there's so many, to be honest with you. I feel sad saying that, but there are so many in my life. And one of the worst I've actually written about on Mouthy Money in the past, and I will name them because they're not around anymore. It's Northern Rock, the bank. And the reason, looking back on my life, that they did me such a, what's the opposite to did me a solid, that phrase, did me such a bad turn, I think, was giving me my first mortgage. And that might sound like a really bad thing to say, but they gave me 115% mortgage, I think it was, may have even been 120 years ago. And they didn't want any proof that I could pay it back, really, other than me kind of going, yeah, I think so, and I had only applied for 100% mortgage, and they said, why don't you have 115 or 120 or whatever it was, because you're going to need some furniture, and of course, being young and stupid, I'm still one of those things. I moved in with my brother at this point. We bought a house together, and we just spent the money on holidays and stuff like that. And we'd had these fishing chairs when we moved in at first, and a year later we were still watching the TV in fishing chairs. I felt, looking back, that they did me no favors at all giving me that loan, because it led to 6, 7, maybe 8 years of worry about being able to pay that mortgage, of moving out at various periods into friends' houses, and then my girlfriend, now wife's house, just so I could rent it out. To get the mortgage paid, and then lots of worry about getting damp stuff and getting stamp done, and just stuff that you don't know that you're going to have to get done to your house. I didn't know about any of all that stuff. So they just didn't. They just, I think, acted crazily irresponsibly, giving me that mortgage. And if that sounds like I'm not taking responsibility myself, I'm not. I just really annoyed with them for that. But it all turned out in the end. And if you look at Mouthy Money, I'm sure you can find out a bit more about that story.
We'll see if we can add a link in the show notes. Actually, I'll dig that out. But I will say actually that I don't think really any. I mean, you made it almost sound like that. You were young and stupid and that kind of thing. I don't really think you have anything to blame. For yourself on that, because it was an institutional, global financial failure,
Yeah.
and that's the problem that led to the financial crisis. This is exactly what happened. So it's enormous, and we can be as rude as we like about Northern Rock because it's long gone. But it was the enormous irresponsibility of the financial system, regulators, governments, all of the above, that created that situation. And going back to that thing about luck, it sounds like you had a little bit of luck that helped work things out in the end, and other people weren't so lucky. But yeah, I mean,
That's how I see it.
happy to dump on them all day long, basically. Right, before we get too much down a rabbit hole, the last question: where or to whom do you turn to for financial advice?
Okay,
And this is advice in the broadest sense rather than the strict sense.
good, because it's not a financial advisor. I've had mortgage advisors in the past, but I've never used a financial advisor, and you can have another discussion on that. It's not a parent, it's not a trader or an investor that I know. It's my wife. And the funny thing is, my wife Helen knows, and she'd admit this, not much about finance. She knows the basics that her parents taught her when she was little. She doesn't know a load about pensions and investing. But the reason I always go to her when I'm thinking of either spending some money or doing something with some money, or I'm suggesting it on behalf of us as a couple, is she always just says, hang on, wait. And it does annoy me, actually. I've got to be honest, because I'll really want to buy the car, or, I'll really want to invest our last 1,000 in the Bitcoin or whatever. I haven't actually done that, but something as crazy. And she'll always say, no, just like wait, because this might not be the right thing to do. And you just seem a bit too excited about it for it to be an intelligent thing for you to be doing right now. And I've got to say, Ed, 75% of the time, when I've been 75% certain of something and she's been 75% worried about it, it's been wrong of me to want to pursue that thing, and right of her to say, just hold on a minute, Mr. Taggart, you need to slow down. So it's my wife, and I reckon it's probably the same with a lot of people, husbands and wives, partners.
Yeah, dreamers and realists. There's got to be one of each, right? And sometimes it switches, but I think that
I don't see it switching in our
marriage. Brilliant, thank you, Michael. Those were really lovely answers, actually. I like the honesty. That's kind of it. So thank you very much for joining us, Michael. It's been a pleasure having you on. We'll have you on again soon for another update.
And there are some, as I said at the beginning of the program, there's some great stuff going on in my business, which I'd like to spam you all about at some time again in the future. So I'd be delighted to come back on. Not that I've been invited, but if I was invited.
Now we'll have you back on. We need to get the business updates from how our small medium enterprise spokesperson is getting along, I think is the main point. So that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. You can catch us now on YouTube. We are now on YouTube on a regular basis, if that is your preference. We're obviously also on Spotify and Apple, and you can catch everything going on the Mouthy Money website too, including the newsletter and all the other good stuff. Thank you very much, and goodbye.